So getting directly into the topic here, Tim, I would like to know from you that everyone here is talking about DeepSeek. So what is your take on it, and how do you think it is going to impact the US-based companies, especially OpenAI?
First of all, what DeepSeek did with the third version, V3, of their reasoning model, it's called R1, is nothing short of stunning when you think about what it accomplished to optimize the entire artificial intelligence industry. So, I first found out about DeepSeek early in December. I've been kind of watching them move from one model to the other. V3 exploded back at basically Davos is where everybody began to talk about it. But of course, last week we were all reading about it. So here's the upshot. There's two things to think about with DeepSeek. Number one, they expose large language models like what we see from OpenAI, what we see from Anthropic, what we see from Google. They expose those as potentially being overshoot. What's overshoot? In the book, Innovator's Dilemma, Clayton Christensen said that what happens in history is sometimes the incumbents, they get too good and they develop a solution that's too big, too well featured, and they create exposure to being disrupted from below by someone who's not quite as good, but it's massively cheaper and more accessible. A good example of that was YouTube. So YouTube came along and disrupted not only broadcast television, but cable television, because broadcast television was too expensive to produce. Cable television was too expensive for the consumer to pay for. YouTube was free, wasn't very good in the beginning, and that's what happened. So that's what DeepSeek did. Now, here's the two things to think about. DeepSeek was cheaper to train and stand up, meaning to create the model was cheaper. Now, caveat, not sure I believe it. We're having to take them on their word. There's no third-party verification of that. And others might say they appropriated, it's a concept called distillation. They appropriated all the training from OpenAI. So I'm going to set that to the side. And let's say that's not the innovation. The bigger innovation was that they figured out a way to run it cheaper, meaning inference, its ability to complete predictions when you put a prompt in. That's 90% cheaper. And that's something that has been verified because they're open source. Because they're open source, data scientists around the world can download it, test it for themselves, and they're all saying it's 10x more efficient than what we had in the past. Now, that's interesting because the premise of why there seems to be an arms race for AI with not only NVIDIA providing high-end GPUs, but with all the hyperscalers building massive data centers. The premise was that you would have to have huge amounts of compute power because of how much inefficiency there was in inference for large language models. So as a result, you've seen stocks like NVIDIA take a big hit. OpenAI, fortunately for them, is private, but it's definitely shown a threat to them. That being said, I believe that there's room for both. I believe that OpenAI is still the best solution. Their O3 model that they've just put into the wild is fantastic. Things like deep research, which is coming to the $200 pro subscribers, is fantastic. So there's just a lot of goodness still coming from OpenAI, but let's just say this. For those that wanted a smaller and cheaper and more affordable solution, DeepSeek has revolutionized the game.
Well said. Now, keeping the same flow alive, DeepSeek has proven that AI advancements can be made at a significantly lower cost. But do you think, like, what are the implications of this? When we talk about lower cost, are we talking about lower quality as well?
Absolutely, you're talking about lower quality for a lot of reasons. I mean, first of all, what people need to understand is that when people talked about DeepSeek being as good as OpenAI, they were only talking about a few use cases. So they were only talking about things like science and coding and some math challenges. Here's what I do know. The hallucination rate of DeepSeek R1 for what I use AI for, and that's research and writing, 83%. 83% hallucination rate, okay? The hallucination rate for the platforms that I currently use is in less than 10%, let's just say. So that's an issue. So it's a limited number of use cases. And think about it this way. If you looked at a language model having experts. These are different use case experts inside a language model. OpenAI is a general frontier model. They have hundreds of experts, whereas DeepSeek has a handful of experts. So that's the first issue. It's lower quality. The second issue is it's not enterprise grade because it's not secure. I'm telling you, I've had enough conversations with chief information security officers to know that no one would either put their corporate information into the web browser version of DeepSeek, knowing that it could potentially end up in the hands of the People's Republic of China. And the same number would not download their free open source model and deploy it on their own machines because of fear of things like backdoor coding that could allow info security risk, et cetera. So DeepSeek is a small business entrepreneurial tool for now because the security quality is quite suspect at the moment.
Yeah, that is also a concern that we have been hearing a lot about. But coming from your personal side, from your personal experience, have you used DeepSeek yet? And how do you think it differs from other tools? And what's your take on how this tool will be used primarily?
I have not put DeepSeek on any of my computers. A company I work for prohibits doing such a thing. I have my own personal computers, but I still have my concern about it. So to be honest, no. The only way I've used DeepSeek is on my phone to test it for some queries. I find it to be delightful in terms of how human it is. Human mimicry is one of the things that these large language models do that is really interesting and that you feel like you're talking to a person. So the answer to your question is yes, I tried the app version on my phone. No, I have not downloaded the open source. That being said, I have sat on demos when I did over the weekend with a very reputable group of academic data scientists where they have done it, and that's where I found that the hallucination rate for the use cases I care about the most is unacceptably high for me to actually use, even if I believed it was secure. So in an upcoming G2 project where we're going to use reasoning models to find insights for buyers, we certainly would use an enterprise grade solution, most likely one by OpenAI.
Yeah. Okay. Coming to my next question, for businesses, especially for B2B businesses trying to stay at the cusp of AI, what should they make of DeepSeek and what should they watch out for, especially when this is more like a competition who's entering in the scene?
Well, there's three things I want to think about here. Number one, let's get back to this idea of overshoot versus undershoot. They should ask themselves, are we too expensive? Is our solution too good? Meaning, are we giving even more functionality than the users want? Because if you are, you could be disrupted like OpenAI and NVIDIA has been disrupted by DeepSeek by two people working in an apartment who are willing to do something that's free, that's not quite as good. So you should be concerned, whoever you are, that you might be an overshoot. The second thing I think that you can take away from it is the power of first principles. I mean, when you think about why DeepSeek accomplished what they did, and I'm just focusing on the inference, their ability to run it 90% cheaper, they went back to first principles. In other words, they started from the beginning and said, I don't care about the best practices in language models. Let's start over from the beginning and let's ask ourselves, does a model really need to be overbuilt like this? No. So they were much more right-sizing instead of overbuilding. And then they asked, is there a way for us to optimize the computation in a way that risks less quality but generates more results? So they used something called mixture of experts, where instead of having a singular expert work on the reasoning, they had a group of experts that all had different skill sets that swarmed together and had optimized the compute power. That was a revolutionary idea. That was first principles. That was like SpaceX, Elon Musk's startup. That was like SpaceX thinking, why don't we reuse boosters, like booster, compartment from rockets instead of just letting them fall into the ocean? NASA would have told you, well, you can never catch them and reuse them. Well, they did, and it's dramatically lowered the cost of going to space. So first principles means you and your team should never believe what the experts say is impossible. You should be willing to try anything. And that's the second idea. The third and the final idea is you should really start thinking a lot about small language models. You should think even more about owning your own model and not being dependent on one of these major platform models that could change the rules on you. So I think, if anything, the idea that language models could offer a good enough solution and be small and hosted on your own laptop, that's real. I've been covering this since 2022. I've always believed large language models may be too good.
Definitely agreeing with you that you've witnessed various tech transformations over the year, and especially in your career. How does this current AI revolution differ from the previous shifts that have happened in the industry? And what are your predictions for the upcoming year?
Well, a couple of things. So we've had fits and starts in artificial intelligence, but I think the biggest reason why was that artificial intelligence for the last 30 or 40 years was mostly funded by academia, and they run out of money. They don't have the capital to pour into the innovation pipeline. That's changed in the last few years. I really believe that the rise of ChatGPT and the hundreds of billions of dollars, if not trillions of dollars, that will be spent against that innovation has created a capitalization bonanza. That means that the rate of innovation is going to speed up. Everything seems to be happening ahead of schedule. I no longer think the Gartner hype cycle is true. I don't think there's a trough of disillusion. We're not getting one. So I think the game has changed, where this is the worst AI you'll ever have. It's going to get remarkably better, maybe every other month for the rest of our lives. So I think leaders out there, you should feel a profound sense of urgency to develop theoretical knowledge and applied knowledge when it comes to AI. You need to read about it. You need to put your hands on it. You need to test it. Don't delegate it. And whatever you do, don't wait on it as a phenomenon. So that's my biggest takeaway about what's different from then to now. And here's the last thing. Artificial intelligence has decoupled prediction from judgment. Now the machine can make a laser accurate prediction if you use the right solution, and the human beings pass the judgment to put it into production. I believe over the course of the next few years, we're going to see less and less and less human in the loop. Human in the loop has been talked about for the last few years as a safety, a safeguard, something that's going to keep it working wonderfully, leave a place for us. Human in the loop is a problem, not a solution. It's a drag, a friction on the actual productivity of artificial intelligence. Getting back to DeepSeek, one of the boldest things they did was they replaced reinforcement learning human feedback, which is how we did it, with just reinforcement learning, letting the machine evaluate the machine, letting the machine's experts swarm to improve the machines. And that's dramatically going to speed up the rate of innovation. I'm covering a few new things in artificial intelligence this year. I'm setting aside quantum computing. I think it's a next year or a next year thing. But instead, I'm looking at synthetic data outputs, which include the creation of synthetic audiences for the purpose of pre-marketing testing. I think that's fascinating. I think it's getting here faster than anyone predicted. I also believe that AI orchestration will be a breakout category. We're going to see that in the next year to two at G2, because there's so many moving parts in artificial intelligence. Being able to orchestrate all of them and align them to a company's model decision, its data architecture decision, and its business concept decisions, that's going to be a game changer. I'm watching organizations like UiPath make bold pivots away from robotic process automation to AI orchestration. Keep your eye on that one. That's going to be a big deal later this year. Lastly, keep your eye on video. The idea of creating effective video with text prompt, it's only going to get better and better and better. I see a great leap happening by the end of the year where it no longer looks creepy and weird, and it actually becomes a formidable competitor to having to shoot and edit video to promote products.
Well, that wraps up our interview here on DeepSeek. Thank you so much, Tim, for your time and for sharing some amazing insights with us. I'm pretty sure that people out there, our target audience, will definitely get some amazing insights from this article and will have a better understanding of what's coming and what we should look forward to. So thank you so much for your time.